It is so wonderful to see you. This is amazing. This is the largest turnout we have ever had, at least as far as I know. I've been with DAPS for 2 years now. This is an amazing turnout. I think I counted 45, 46 today. So this is absolutely amazing. Please give yourselves a round of applause. We are so grateful to have you here today. I'm Keisha. I am the events manager with DAPS.
Hello, Keisha.
Hello. It's wonderful to see y'all here. And so I do all the events. You'll see me here every month doing the education series. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mike, but I will kind of address you guys after his presentation about some things going on at DAPS. So with that, Dr. Mike Brach is a licensed doctor of physical therapy, a former amateur fighter, former kinesiology professor, and international certified fight referee. As an advisory board member to Adaptive Martial Arts Association, and through the work of the board of UT Southwestern, Adaptive Sports Coalition, and on our medical advisory board of Dallas Area Parkinson Society, he wants to change the way physical therapy is structured for people with chronic and progressive conditions and empower people to better participate in communities of wellness. So with that, can we give a huge round of applause to Dr. Mike?
Well, you sure know how to make somebody feel cool. Thank you. I'm Mike Brach. I'm a physical therapist. Work at a clinic in Richardson called Tribe Wellness, and I love DAPS. Nobody is a bigger fan of the Dallas Area Parkinson Society than I am, because in this very room, gosh, 7, 8, almost 8 years ago, we started planning to have a pilot program to use non-contact boxing training to help people with Parkinson's. And I was so excited because, I used to do a lot of fighting. I've done a lot of martial arts my whole life. Thank goodness, it's one of the things that's kept me sane and out of trouble, which is also a miracle. High energy people, trouble finds them. And that's, my mom enrolled me in martial arts when I was a kid to try to help slow some of that down. But in this very room, we got to put together a program which has changed the course of my life, for sure. When I was a physical therapy student, I was passionate about helping people with Parkinson's because my grandmother had an atypical form, progressive supranuclear palsy, which looks a lot like PD. It's a movement disorder. It's a disease of the basal ganglia, just like Parkinson's disease, but it doesn't respond to medication. And so the world we knew with her when she was going through it was totally different because people just didn't know as much. And with advances in technology and science and research and healthcare overall, things have gotten worlds better. And if you look around the room, you can see that. You can see, gosh, we're able to get up, move around, have some fun, have some community. And we're going to talk a lot about science when it comes to balance today. And we're going to talk about some themes from Tai Chi. But let's not also forget one of the biggest reasons our groups at Tribe Wellness are a big hit and helpful, and one of the biggest reasons DAPS makes a lasting and profound impact on the community is the single most important factor in your longevity and your quality of life is social connection. Having strong social connections with people around you. And I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years who have said something like, Parkinson's disease took away my social connections. But with DAPS and with our groups, and we got all these ways to connect with people and for people to still take positive action. So I want you to know, regardless of what type of exercise we're going to get into a lot of nuances today, but regardless of what type you choose to do, show up, and even if you don't think you're doing it well, keep showing up, because you might make some friends, you might find some people you can connect with, and you might be able to help them too. And that feels pretty great. So that's enough of my soapbox rant about that. Let's move on to why we're here. So we're stepping into stability. Why? Because a lot of people with Parkinson's disease talk about instability with their balance. I don't want that to be confused with postural instability, where you lack the ability to control posture altogether. But we're going to focus today in our talk on addressing balance impairments from Parkinson's with themes from Tai Chi, which is an old Chinese martial art and a really cool, approachable form of exercise. I know our groups at Tribe Wellness are famous for boxing because it's fun to hit stuff. But also, there are so many other things you can do where you're not hitting stuff. How about that for fancy scientific talk? Keisha gave me a great bio, so I don't even really need to go through this. I get to have a lot of fun, and so far I haven't had to get a real job as a PT. That's kind of a summary there. I can summarize the disclosures, and I'll make sure you get access to this, but basically, if there's a photo on here, it's a photo that either I've got a citation for or I've got permission to use. Some folks from our groups might say, I don't remember giving you permission for that, but they signed a waiver that said they don't mind giving permission. But also, you know, these are photos of people having fun and feeling great, so hopefully you're digging that. And I don't want to lose sight of, you know, when we talk about exercise, we talk about all these benefits of exercise. There's still a lot of reasons to go do physical therapy, a lot of them. And there's still a lot of reasons to do, if you can, individual PT. You know, sometimes you go to a clinic and a therapist is seeing 3 or 4 people at once and you think, how am I getting help? You probably are. But if you can go somewhere where you're working with somebody one-on-one, it's very helpful. And so I think everybody with Parkinson's should, even if they don't think they need it, do an annual tune-up check-in, because at least you can get some data to see what's changed from one year to the next. If you feel like something has really changed recently and you don't know why, it's worth doing some PT. If you started to fall or you're freezing, if you're feeling too weak, if you're trying to boost your balance, group exercise can help, but also it works even better when you couple group exercise with individual work. So, maybe I can move this slide on. Maybe not. Yeah, look at that. So we're going to get into some basic terms for balance. We're going to get into some common impairments from Parkinson's disease and symptoms from Parkinson's disease and look at how they relate to balance. We're going to get into some basics of Tai Chi, because that's the focus of this talk. We're going to look at some strategies from Tai Chi that help people with Parkinson's disease to move better. And we'll try it out if you want. And if you don't want to, don't worry. It's okay. You don't have to. So, and this is a great picture from the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is the second biggest holiday on the Chinese calendar. Tai Chi is a Chinese martial art. And in this picture, you see some folks from some of our groups, maybe some familiar faces here. You see one of my teachers, Master Wu Zongjia, who's from the Hebei province in China and went to college for martial arts. He and I had the privilege of attending the World Wushu Cup in November, and it was so cool because there's a routine in Tai Chi. Tai Chi, we do techniques, we string them together almost like a dance, and that's a routine. And people came from all over the world to run the same routine at the opening ceremonies of this World Wushu Cup. It was a really special thing. There were 128 of us in unison, broadcast all over the globe, and I got to meet some really cool people, and all that's because of Master John. So let's jump into some balance terms and basics. There are 3 major inputs for balance. You got vision, you got somatosensory input, and you have vestibular input. And you might say, vision, I get that. I can either see or I can't see, right? Or maybe, depending on my prescription strength, if I got fancy lenses, I see at varying levels. For somatosensory input, I want to take a second to call this out because this gets a little tricky for folks. The fancy term is proprioception. The short definition of proprioception is knowing where your body is in space. But really proprioception, some people call it the sixth sense. And it helps to determine the size of a movement that's appropriate, the amount of force to generate for a movement, and the speed to do a movement. And that's a really big deal because how many of you just want to say things like the size of a movement, the force used to generate a movement, or the speed of a movement? How many of you might say, hey, I think Parkinson's disease might play a role with proprioception? Anybody with me there? A few hands? Yeah. And then there's the vestibular system, which is tricky too, because it's the deep inner ear. But the best way to think about the vestibular system is it's what helps with your equilibrium of staying steady or thinking the world is spinning around you. Or if you've ever been on a cruise ship, a lot of you might have had a vestibular adjustment from being on the ship after several hours to help make it easy so you're not constantly thinking about having to right yourself against the rocking of the waves. And when you get off the ship, initially you kind of feel like, hey, am I still on the ship? What's going on? But eventually you have an adaptation, and that's because of the vestibular system. So some vestibular training happens with eye movements, and some of it just comes from adapting to changes. So if we look at those major inputs for balance, physical therapy, occupational therapy, exercise like Tai Chi and other forms of exercise probably aren't going to do a lot to help you with your vision per se, but they really focus on the bottom two, proprioception and vestibular training. And we'll look at a few major things for balance, but some categories to think about balance strategies. Planned balance, I see what's coming and I know how to respond. My experience working with people with Parkinson's over the years is their planned balance is usually pretty good. If you had to go straight across a room and nothing jumped in front of your path, probably be able to get there. But a lot of folks that I've seen over the years with Parkinson's disease have more complications when it comes to reactive balance, and that can get a little tricky. Some of it's because of slowness of movement. Some of it's because of rigidity or stiffness. Some of it's from changes in muscle tone from the body. But the way to think about it is probably when you've been to your neurologist and you've been tested, they've done something where they tug you from behind and see how you respond. And if it's a smaller nudge or tug, muscles around the ankle kick in to help steady. So it's a righting reaction. If it's a bigger nudge, muscles around the hips tend to kick in to help right your balance or react. Or if it's a really big nudge, you might need to take a step. Or if you're like some people I know, you might say, hey, I couldn't take a step in time and they could catch me. And all of that is okay, but that helps you see how impacted or how severe your impact is with balance training and the need for balance training. So in Tai Chi, the cool thing is there's a lot of research that shows it can improve all of those different types of reactions. Ankle strategies, hip strategies, stepping strategies. And from a research study in this very room, we published a paper from a study funded by the Parkinson Foundation that DAPS helped promote. We published a study that showed how our boxing program also helps with reactive balance. That's pretty cool. If you want a link to it, I'll send it to you. It's in the Journal of Neurorehabilitation. If you've got good planned balance and pretty good reactive balance, another way to improve your balance or to boost your balance even more is with dual task training. And if you've been to Tammy's back there, the world famous Tammy Slosson's back there, if you've been to Tammy's class, or if you've been in one of my groups, you've probably done some dual task training, whether you realize it or not. And so I have on here a picture, the color's not dark enough that I chose, but of somebody walking and chewing gum. It's tough to do two things at once. But practicing that can boost the bandwidth of the system in your brain to make it easier to do multiple things at once. And that's a big deal because that directly connects to reactive balance. If you're at the grocery store and some little kid comes running in front of your path, it helps to be able to react and change directions. that's easier to do more quickly if you've done things like dual task training. So you might say, gosh, that's a lot of info. I thought this was about Tai Chi. I thought we were doing some stuff and not just sitting here. We'll get there. A little bit more on Parkinson's disease, and we'll fly through it because I think there's some folks in here who know some of this stuff. This is the textbook picture of somebody with Parkinson's disease. And I always like to show it partly because of the posture, but partly if you had a plumb line that ran right down the middle of this guy and looked at his center of mass, it probably hit somewhere around the forefoot, somewhere around the base of the toes. And you see his head and his trunk are kind of tipped forward over that. So when he's walking, he's not necessarily reaching out with the heel for good quality walking mechanics. He's probably shuffling his feet and dragging and getting a whole lot of extra work up on the toes. And that's not the end of the world, but that's pretty common. And it's something that Tai Chi can help with, physical therapy can help with, specific gait training or walking training can help with. And when you look at the role Parkinson's disease can have on overall motor function, your ability to perform movements, we know that there's a loss of flexibility in the spine. Things get stiffer. Some of that's normal age, some of that's worsened by Parkinson's disease. We know there can be changes in core strength. Some of that's directly from Parkinson's disease. Some of that is from less activity because of these other things. We know there are changes in posture, and as a result, there are asymmetries in muscles. So usually what happens is muscles on the front of the body tend to tighten down and get a little overactive. Muscles on the back of the body tend to get a little weaker and underactive. And we know that respiratory volume gets reduced. I think that's one that we don't spend enough time as a healthcare community talking about, because life goes better if you're breathing. You well know that, right? But if you think about some of the non-motor symptoms from Parkinson's disease, like stress, you know, if your brain's not manufacturing the feel-good chemical dopamine anymore, you might still be getting it from your medication, right? But it puts you at a greater risk of anxiety, greater risk of depression, greater risk of apathy even. And one thing that can help reduce stress and help with some of those symptoms is as simple as deep belly breathing. The fancy term for it is diaphragmatic breathing, where you're using the diaphragm to expand your lung capacity for a deeper breath in. And if you let out the breath even more slowly, you can help reduce stress hormones. And that's a big deal too. That's a foundational principle of Tai Chi, comes from our breathing, but the same applies to yoga, the same applies to meditation. There are a lot of ways to do this. But the more we can focus on even just sitting, if you're sitting and watching TV, like the big game last night, you take a few slow, deep breaths, it's easier to keep taking deeper breaths. It's easier to oxygenate the brain. It's easier to reduce stress. It's a big deal. So we talked about posture. We talked a little bit about balance. And hopefully this kind of lines up with what we were talking about earlier. Because of Parkinson's disease, a lot of stuff is slower. So reactions for balance can be delayed. Also, there can be, because of changes to proprioception, knowing where you are in space, or how big of a motion to make, or how much force to use, it can be harder to have anticipatory control of keeping your body upright. It can also make it harder to respond to perturbations, is a fancy term. Getting nudged. Perturbation is getting nudged. You know, somebody might give you a little perturbation if you don't act right. Or your neurologist may do that perturbation test to see your response. But we know muscle weakness also plays a role, and some of that is directly because of postural changes from Parkinson's disease. We know muscle weakness is a complex topic because sometimes it's related to changes in muscle tone, you know, where it feels like, gosh, I'm contracting these muscles all the time and I'm not even trying, I'm so stiff. And sometimes it's from not using them. And this is interesting. I used to say what's the best exercise for Parkinson's disease? Well, the best exercise for people with Parkinson's disease is the one you'll do safely and consistently. And that's true. But just this past Friday, my lovely coworker, Dr. Melanie Farrar, had a journal club article review with my team and I. And we looked at this article, which was just published last year in the Geriatric Journal of Physical Therapy. And it is a meta-analysis, which means it wasn't just one study. They looked at 56 different studies about exercise and Parkinson's disease. Why? So they could boost the number of participants they were looking at. So they came up with 2,740 people with Parkinson's through this meta-analysis. So they were looking at data from people from ages 56 to 77, and they looked at 9 different categories of exercise. And they found the most effective form of exercise really emphasized sensory motor training. And you might say, well, what's sensory motor training? We'll get into that in a second, but if you think about what we just talked about with proprioception, knowing what size of movement to make, knowing how much force to use, and trying to train that idea of knowing where your body is in space, that's sensory motor training. So how could you get that? You could get that a lot of different ways. But it's one of the magic things behind Tai Chi. Yeah. We can skip right on past this. That's great. There are other key elements, too, that help with sensory motor training, like axial rotation, getting some twisting or rotation that doesn't hurt. Weight shifting, changing the amount of force you have from one leg to the other. That can really help. Stepping in multiple directions. A lot of our day is spent just walking forward. But if you get some practice stepping to different sides and stepping backwards safely, that's really helpful. And working out in multiple planes of motion. So a plane is just like if you were slicing down one thin piece of this room. That's one plane, right? This is the sagittal plane, the horizontal plane. So trying to work out in different types of movement, not just straight on in one direction. You might say, well, hey, that's fine and everything, and you're saying Tai Chi helps with this, but what even is Tai Chi? Well, here's a picture of Grandmaster Wong Chen Liang. He's my teacher from Ohio, where I grew up and learned martial arts. It's his teacher. So Grandmaster Wong came over to the U.S. in the 1960s, and he's one of the early teachers of Tai Chi and of Kung Fu in this country. And if you were to ask him, he would say, Tai Chi Chuan, which is the official title, translates to Supreme Ultimate Fist, or some people would say Grand Ultimate Fist. I've got a friend named Taylor, and he once asked me, hey, Tai Chi, isn't that slow motion karate for old guys? And as a almost lifelong practitioner, I wanted to take offense, and I thought, well, gosh, that is kind of an accurate way of describing it to an outside. There's a lot going on within, whatever. But, it's mostly practiced for health purposes. Every motion in Tai Chi has a fighting application, and you can say, you're probably not going to fight somebody at this speed.
You never know, Mark.
You never know. You're right, Luke. But the fighting application has kind of taken a back seat over the years because of the health benefits. And also, one of the reasons it's so helpful is because it's a form of action meditation. So I mentioned earlier, my mom put me in martial arts when I was a kid. I've got ADHD. It's always really hard for me to sit still, even on medication. But action meditation, where you're directing thought with movement and trying to coordinate movement, you're focused on that, makes it a whole lot easier to get the benefits of meditation without having to sit still and contemplate the navel or whatever you want to say. So, I like this picture. For the last 10 years, I've been teaching a class at Clybourne Park. Some folks from our groups show up, some folks from the general public show up, and it's just a good time. But this gives you another breakdown. What's Tai Chi? Well, it's rooted in Chinese philosophy. It's a martial art, but now it's practiced for well-being. And why is it so helpful? Well, it's so helpful because it emphasizes slow movements, constant steady weight shifting, which we know is a key to success, postural awareness, which we know is a key to success. It challenges your balance. It emphasizes controlled breathing, and also we get to work on coordination. There are 5 major styles, and the most commonly practiced one is the one at the top of the screen, Yang style. Or my good buddy David is sitting up here in the front, and when he did Tai Chi with me a few times years ago, he said, Mike, in Texas, we call that Yang. Okay? So if you want to call it Yang style, if you want to call it Yang style, it doesn't matter. What matters more is doing Tai Chi. There are 4 others outside of Yang style that are kind of less practiced, but it's nice to know there are other options. Most of them look like Yang style and are pretty slow. The one that I would say probably people with Parkinson's disease should avoid if you had to pick one, and I don't think you'll run into this too often, is Chen style, because it's low, it's fast, there's jumping, there's leaping, there's splits. It's crazy. It's fun, but it's crazy. So, people report all kinds of benefits from training Tai Chi, but the general themes are what we've been talking about. Improved balance. Why is that? Well, some of that's because of improved body awareness. Some of it's because of improved postural awareness. Some of it's improved flexibility. It's easier to control where you're moving if you're not as stiff, right? And some of that, too, like we talked about, is that increased sense of relaxation or well-being. So I like Tai Chi because it really balances out what we do in boxing. You know, we really get after it, punching hard and fast. With Tai Chi, we're slowing things down. It's the total opposite side of the same coin, exercise for living well. And there's a guy who is pretty famous for practicing, who studies at Harvard, and at the Harvard Health Publications at the medical school. He's got a book even where he gets into how Tai Chi helps with all kinds of different conditions. But there's a list here of different conditions that Tai Chi has been studied and found through research to help. And some of these things apply also to Parkinson's disease, because you could say, well, gosh, some folks with Parkinson's disease might have arthritis just from living life. Some of them might have low bone density because of Parkinson's or other reasons, probably more for other reasons. People might have balance disorders, not because of Parkinson's disease, but just from living life. But it helps with all these other things, and just like any form of exercise, it can help you sleep a little better too. So that guy from Harvard, he calls Tai Chi the best exercise for the rest of your life. And it's hard to make blanket statements about exercise, but he was able to do that with Tai Chi because it applies to so many different populations. When we think about why is Tai Chi helpful for people with Parkinson's disease, more specifically though, there's a study from 2014. The researcher here is Dr. Wayne, and he says, after looking at a number of different groups, for people with Parkinson's disease, one of the same benefits from Tai Chi is the same benefit that comes from any form of exercise. Moderate or even moderately intense aerobic exercise we know can be key. So if you think about the same amount of effort it takes to take a brisk walk, not one where you're stopping for the dog to sniff the bushes every 5 feet, but where you've got a steady pace, that's the same amount of effort that you need from any exercise program to improve hormone releases. Important hormones like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which are linked with slowing the progression of symptoms, but then also to boost blood flow to the brain so the brain can be more oxygenated, more alert, and more excitable. If things are slowed down by Parkinson's disease, having more blood flow to the brain really helps to speed things up when it comes to your responses. He found helps with boosting agility and mobility. And one big thing that I don't think we also spend enough time on is is thinking about memorizing or learning new skills and movement patterns. I say that because in physical therapy in the clinic, I hear a lot of people saying, well, I don't want to do something new yet, man. I want to figure out how to do the other stuff I need to do safely. Can we do that? And that's helpful. But sometimes when you add something new, you strengthen connections in the brain that have carryover to other tasks. And learning the routines of Tai Chi, I think sometimes can be a barrier for folks, especially, I don't know if anybody here runs into this, but if you feel like, well, I do it, but I want to be really good at it. And if I'm not really good at it, I don't really want to do it. It's probably harder to show up and be consistent and get the health benefits, right? So if you can focus more on the action of the doing and less on the feeling like you need to do it perfectly, just like everything else in life, it goes a lot better. It's easier to get better. But another big benefit for people with Parkinson's comes from training in sustained attentional focus. And attentional focus applies in multiple ways. One is just focusing on anything for a longer period of time, because it's easy to get distracted. It's even easier to get distracted because of Parkinson's disease. But intentional focus on a single activity like shifting your weight forward and backward really helps boost your awareness of where your body is in space. So when we think about proprioception, sensory motor training, that's one of the keys to success here. So we talked a little bit too about point 5 here, which is reducing stress and the meditative or relaxing aspect of Tai Chi. There's some people here today who have done Tai Chi with me for years. And they would say, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but they might say, you know what, there are times where I'm trying to do Tai Chi and I don't feel so relaxed, buddy. And that's true. Because it's hard to learn new things, and it's hard to maintain that attentional focus. But I think they'll also tell you when I'm focused on deep belly breathing and when I'm reminding myself of the winds. You know, Davis Finney from the Davis Finney Foundation has a great book that if you don't have it, I think you should get it. It's called Every Victory Counts. It's a manual for living well with Parkinson's disease. There's a copy back there. Keisha's got it. And that book talks about trying to find the wins and stack them up. If you're having a hard time learning something new and you can find elements of success, it sure goes better. And so you might say, well, I'm not doing Tai Chi well, but I'm breathing. I'm focusing on deep breath. That's a good thing. Oh, I might not be doing the technique well, but I'm shifting my weight. That's a good thing. Or you might say, I'm not doing the technique perfectly, but I feel like I'm moving my hands better. You find that thing you can focus on, and it just goes better. And shoot, the 6th point here, reducing stress pathways by spending time in leisure activities with social support. It's good to know that's also linked directly with not just feeling good, living well, and knowing cool people, but improved cognitive function. So if you think, gosh, my memory isn't what it used to be, some of that might just be living life, right? Some of that might be Parkinson's, some of that might be living life, some of it might be distraction or stress. But think of how much better it is from being part of a group. Or if you're part of a group and still not doing better, well, at least you got a group to help you remember stuff. Right? I mean, I say that in class all the time. Hey, will somebody remind me of this? If all of us are thinking about it, we might be able to have one of us remember. And that's a beautiful thing. So, we're going to get into this now, because I think I've been talking a lot, and I'm worried people are going to pass out here. How does Tai Chi work? It works by slow, gentle movement. So how about this? I want to invite some of you to try this stuff. You can do it from a chair. That's one of the beautiful things with Tai Chi. If you want to stand, you can do that as long as you spread out and you feel safe standing. But let's just try some slow, gentle movement to see what this is like. And we'll go through a few other slides while we're doing it. But see, if you're going to stand, I ask that you maybe go to the side of the room or the back of the room so that way you're not blocking somebody's view. And I'll ask that if you're standing, you're hopefully somebody who feels safe standing. works? Okay. This is great. So just make sure when you reach out to your sides, you don't whack anybody. And let's just think about slow, gentle movement first, huh? There's a famous technique in Tai Chi called drawing the silk. We've got crazy names for our techniques, and that's okay. But one of them is one that we use to begin and end all of our sequences. It's a technique called drawing the silk. So you want to imagine, just like a marionette puppet, how it has a string attached to its wrist. You want to imagine you got strings attached to your wrists, and we want to get our feet about hips width, with the shoulder blades back and down. We want to take the crown of the head and just press it on up so we're up nice and tall. And let's just draw those wrists up just to shoulder height. We don't have to go any higher, just to shoulder height. We're going to bring the palms out a little bit, and we'll lower them down. I see a lot of people who are already doing like NASCAR Tai Chi. So we want to slow it down. Think slow, slow, attentional focus. So let's slowly draw the wrists up little by little. Keep the head up, keep the back up, and we'll just lower the arms back down. Sometimes it's helpful to imagine dragging your hands through water. If that helps you, great. If not, don't worry about it. Up and down. You might say, did we just do Tai Chi? You better believe it. But we can add to it. We can add some breathing. So think about what we talked about earlier. We talked about diaphragmatic breathing, deep belly breathing. So as we draw those wrists up this time, let's breathe in little by little all the way up. Think of it as sipping the air rather than gulping it. So little by little, deep breath in. Hopefully when you get to shoulder height, you can't breathe in anymore. And then slowly breathe out as we lower the arms down. Hopefully when your arms are down by the side, you can't breathe out anymore. So slowly and steadily, breathing in and out. In and out. And I think some of you can feel it too. You can feel if you're starting to tip forward with your posture. You can correct that. You can feel if you're going too fast. But so we've been coordinating, which is dual task training. We've been coordinating breath with movement. Let's add some footwork, huh? Let's do the footwork separately. Then we'll add the footwork, okay? So I'll get out in front. Hopefully you can see my feet. And normally I mirror people. I'm not going to. I'm just going to sit. I'm just going to move my left. Hopefully you'll move your left. So we'll start out feet together. If you feel steady with that. If not, you can wind them a little bit. But let's pick up the left heel, which is the worldwide symbol for saying, I'm stepping out to the left, or with my left. So we'll lightly step out to the left and try not to shift the weight over yet. Then little by little, we'll even out the weight between the feet, shifting the weight to the middle. Then we'll sink a little bit, like we're sitting in a high chair, but keep the head up and the back up. Nice and easy. Good. We'll stand on up. We'll pick the heel up. And we'll lightly step in on the toes, and we'll lower the heel down. You can feel, whoa, when we go slowly, that takes a lot of balance, that takes a lot of control and a lot of strength. Let's do it again. Heel up, lightly step out, we'll shift over and sink just a bit. We'll stand up tall, we'll pick the heel up, and little by little we'll bring it in. Bring that foot in onto the toes, lower the heel down. You might say, hey, I don't know, Mike, I got to slide that foot in, and that's A-okay. A-okay. But let's try coordinating now the arms with the footwork. It'll be awesome. And remember, if it's too much to coordinate, just pick one. It's okay. We'll get there. So, here we are. We're standing tall. We got the shoulders back. We got the head up high. Left heel up. Let's lightly step out. And as we shift the weight over to the middle, we'll draw the wrists up, breathing in. Sink, breathing out, lowering the arms down. We'll come back up tall, breathing in. Step in on the toes. Hands and heel go down together. And you might say, hey, I thought that looked easy, but it wasn't easy. That's Tai Chi, right? It's a lot of work. But I think we just got to focus on so many things. And in doing that, how many of you found, gosh, my mind was racing off into the future with all the stuff I got to do later today, or in the past of all the things I need to do? Sometimes that happens, but you get a break from that because you're focusing on trying to coordinate arm movements with some weight shifting and some footwork and some breathing. I'm going to advance to the next slide so I feel better about accomplishing this slideshow. But hopefully you got to see posture, upright, head up, back up, shoulders back. Hopefully you got to feel how we move slowly, and that helps to improve flexibility and boost that proprioceptive input. Let's try another one. Let's bring your left hand out in front of your face, fingertips at nose level. Good. We'll call this blocking position. And we can bring that left hand over the shoulder and then down to clear the hips. We can park that hand at the waist. So that's our blocking technique. It's called brush the knee. So this technique's called brush the knee and palm strike. We're in blocking position. We'll block across and down. We can add some breathing with it. We can take a deep breath in. We can breathe out as we block across and down. Good. We got another hand, hopefully. The other hand can be behind you a little bit, or if it hurts your shoulder to reach up high, maybe you park it by the ear. But we'll point the fingertips forward. We'll reach forward. We'll press forward like we're high-fiving each other. Yeah. So we can bring it back. We can point forward, reach and press forward. Earlier we were talking about vestibular training. One way to train vestibular input is with smooth pursuit of the eyes, tracking movements. Your eyes can track your palm striking hand here as you point and press forward. It's a beautiful thing. So let's put both hands together. We'll work on coordination. Blocking position. We got another arm up behind us or out the side. Front hand here blocks down as the back hand points and presses forward. And you might say, I don't know how easy that was to coordinate. The good news is we go slowly. We get a lot of repetition. So there's opportunity to practice. Let's do it again. Blocking position. We got an arm up here. We'll brush the knee. Palm strike. Yeah. If we want to get crazier, we can alternate. So we can set up again. Front hand blocks down. Back hand points and presses forward. And if we want to get coordinated even more, we can come into blocking position. Raise the other arm up. We can start alternating sides. So brush the knee, palm strike, change sides, and brush the knee, palm strike. And if you feel like, gosh, that's so tricky, don't worry. That's part of learning new stuff. And that's not a Parkinson thing. It's hard because it's difficult. So know that. If you feel like, gosh, I'm not doing it perfectly, don't sweat it. But we talked about how we're harmonizing hands with feet. We're harmonizing breath with movement. Elbows technically are getting harmonized, knees, all that stuff. We talked a lot earlier about deep belly breathing and how that reduces stress hormones. You might say, but I'm getting stressed out learning this. You could say with practice, though, it gets easier, right?
No.
And as it gets easier, if it gets easier, you can get kind of lost in the techniques, which is a really cool thing, too. So thanks for being brave and trying that. I want to invite some folks from our group, if they'd like to. I thought we could, rather than having me bore you with some more routine information and summaries of studies, I thought we'd just show you what it can look like since we've tried it out. So have a seat, and we'll just take a couple of minutes here. If some of you who have done Tai Chi pretty regularly are going to want to come behind me, we've got a simple routine we can run. So we just did two postures, right? We did drawing the silk, and we did brush the knee and palm strike. That's two postures, two techniques from the Yang style Tai Chi. The traditional Yang long form is 108 postures. 108. We're going to do a short one called the 10 instead. So we're not going to hold you hostage for 108, but we just want you to see what it can look like. So let's do this. We'll start out feet together, and you can all just follow me as best you can. Before we begin, let's bring the shoulders back, crown of the head up. We'll take in and we'll let go of a nice, slow, deep breath. We'll pick that left heel up and lightly step out to the left to draw the silk, just like we did earlier. If you want to try to follow in your chair, have at it. Left palm up in front, right arm back. We're going to repulse the monkey here. Press forward and pull in. Flip up and reach back. Press forward and pull in. Let's shift over to the left. Toes up on the right. We'll turn in. So we're getting direct, multi-planar movement. We'll step in. Left hand and foot come in. Right arm up. We're going to brush the knee and palm strike towards the wall. Brush the knee and palm strike. We'll rock back with the toes up. Turn in little by little. Sitting back, we'll step in again to brush the knee and palm strike the other way. We'll rock back with the arms and toes up. We'll sway to the left. Sit back and gather the ball so we can step out to part the wild horse's mane. We'll do it on the other side. Unfortunately for you, Tai Chi is a lot more fun to do than it might be to watch. We'll face the front here for cloud hands. But I wanted you to see what it can look like. We'll shift left, turn into the corner, change hands. We'll pull the right foot in as we turn to the right. Right hand and heel down, left hand and heel up, and we're almost synchronized too. We'll step out, shift over, we'll turn in. Let's change hands and we'll change directions. Shift right, turning in. For a long time I've thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did a Tai Chi flash mob in front of big techs at the state fair? Change hands and feet, step out, turn in. Change. And Tai Chi is easily modifiable. We've had some people who are in wheelchairs, some people who can do more than I can do even. But this is one where we want to work on balance, rooster on one leg. And it can be modified for any height. But you can see how getting time on one leg is really helpful. We're going to kick next, and I'll warn you, some people, their kick is lightly stepping forward, but we're going to block up and kick right. We're going to pull it in, block up and kick left. He's not kicking me.
Okay.
This is Luke's opportunity to kick me in the butt. He's not taking it.
Never have to say
It's a miracle. We'll sway. We're almost through. We'll gather the ball. We'll step out here grasping the sparrow's tail. Reach out, pull down and in. Press the wrist. Sit back and lower the palms. And then we'll scoop and press. One more side and we'll wind it down. Gather the ball. Step out and separate. Reach out, put down and in. Shift and press. Sit back and lower the palms. You can see how you get more flexible doing this stuff. Sway to the front. Let's cross wrists here, rising up. And lower down, and then our closing. Draw the silk in reverse. Good. How about a hand for these folks? Awesome. Thank you. So hopefully you can see there's a lot available in Tai Chi. It can be as challenging as you want it to be. It can be as simple as you want it to be. And hopefully it just gives you one more thing to think about. Or some elements from Tai Chi that you can apply to whatever exercise you're already doing. I want to thank all of you for being here today, and I want to remind all of you, you're already kicking butt in a lot of ways because you're here taking positive action. That's a big deal. You got a question?
Yes, I'm not a Parkinson's patient, but I have a eustachian disorder and have found a little battery-operated appliance that is helpful to me
Okay.
called an ear popper, and it's like physical therapy for the eustachian tube.
Well, that's
Do you
cool.
think that would help any of these people?
I have no idea. I think it would depend on the extent of impairment in the deep inner ear, and it would depend on the cause of the impairment. So they'd probably want to work more with an ENT or something like that, but it's possible.
Well, I got that suggestion from my allergist,
Okay,
who is a DO.
okay.
And I found it really helpful, so I just wondered if that might help anybody here.
Shoot, I don't know, but if it seems like it might help you, talk to her.
You get
Seriously.
them on the internet, they're called ear poppers, they're about that big and they're battery operated.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? Questions, concerns? Tammy, what do you got?
Dr. Mike, what time and day is your class at Clybourne Park?
Oh, that's a good question. So this is the 10th year of class at Clybourne Park. And we have not settled out on the day and time. The first 7 years, it was just about every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. And then they moved it to Sunday last year. And then I thought, gosh, I also like having a little bit of a life. So I started doing it once or twice a month instead. But I'll know more by the end of this month. Which is good because early in the morning on the weekends anyway, it's still too cold to go to Clybourne. But I will announce if you want to come out for our 10th ever World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, we do have that day and time formalized at Clybourne Park. Every year we've gotten a proclamation from the mayor calling it Dallas Tai Chi Day. It's on the last Saturday of April, which this year is, I think, the 27th. Yeah, Saturday, April 27th. It'll be at 10 a.m. We'll be on the East Lawn. It's fun, it's free. Come on, bring your friends, bring your family, bring your enemies. They might be friends by the end. Come on out, it'll be great. Any other questions, though, comments, concerns?
How long has this group been doing this Tai Chi? Because not a single one of them stumbled.
Oh, that's a good question there, sir. We've had folks who were up here today with varying experience. Who's probably the newest to that gang? Maybe Brent or Luke? Brent, when did you start with us? A year ago?
February.
Yeah, almost a year is the person who's been there the least, or the shortest time, not the least, but the shortest amount of time. But it doesn't. The thing I like to think of with Tai Chi is even if you feel like, gosh, I'm someone who stumbles all the time, we can get you something with support that you can hang on to while you work on the weight shifting. I've had people who do it from a chair. Just like in any exercise group, the bigger deal is consistency and safety.
And Mike,
Yes.
you might want to tell people about the advantage of the avec chien workout.
It's one of Luke's pocket.
Avec chien with the dog.
Oh, with dog. Luke is speaking French, and I'm not as up to date as I should be on French. He said, with the dog. That's my dog, Boba. She's at our clinic a lot. She's really shy. A lot of people in boxing don't ever see her, but she comes out during Tai Chi and kind of cruises the room a little bit.
And it is such an honor.
Yeah, she's a sweet little girl. Anyway, I think that's fun, but maybe, I don't know. Other questions?
Yes. Can you tell us when you teach? Is it you do non-contact boxing here at
Yeah,
Preston
we've got
Hollow Church?
boxing in this very room, Mondays and Wednesdays from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. we've got 12 groups a week for people with Parkinson's. So a bunch of them are at my clinic in Richardson, right near Coit and Beltline, across from Cottonwood Park. We've got Tai Chi there 3 days a week. We've got boxing here a couple days a week. We've got boxing there a few days a week. We got all kinds of stuff. And we got a hiking group, the Peak Performers. We're going to start hiking again soon with students from TWU's Physical Therapy School and physical therapy students from UT Southwestern and the University of St. Augustine Dallas campus will come out. We're training for a big hike that you're all welcome to join us on as we train. We're heading out to Tyler State Park on May 4th. We got all kinds of events. Try to keep people from getting bored.
Canyon was full, otherwise we would.
Well, and there's a more intense hiking group that's training also, and the training program's rolling out next month. We're going to take some folks to Spain to hike on El Camino de Santiago along the path of the Apostle David. So that'll be cool. Long way from when Sharon and David and I and Beth and I hit the top of Texas, the Guadalupe Peak, which is one of the craziest days of our lives, I think. 14 and a half hours of a journey.
Did we ever figure like how we left
We can leave it. Everyone, anyway, that's enough. I'm going to stop now. Thank you all.
Can we give a big round for Dr. Mike? Oh, yeah.
Can I plug the class here?
Sure. Tammy has something.
I'm gonna stay down.
You're gonna stay down there. Okay.
So, hello everyone, I'm Tammy Slauson, and I teach movement therapy for people with Parkinson's disease for DAPS. And my class here is on Tuesday from 10:30 to 11:30. Had to check the time in my brain. And then right after my class is speech therapy with Lynn, and that way you get a double dose of goodness for people with Parkinson's. 10:30 to 11:30 on Tuesdays here for movement therapy, and then 11:30 to 12:30 with Lynn for speech therapy. And as you all know, Parkinson's can really affect your voice, so you want to stay for that second hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna, because that was just absolutely, positively epic, and we love Dr. Mike. Just a few things before you leave out today. I'm just curious, how many people here are new to an educational series, have never attended one of these, just came because of our fabulous presenter? Fabulous. We are so thankful to have you here. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you. Before you leave, please leave your name and your email, just so that we can connect you with our newsletter and everything that's going on with DAPS. We would love that. We have 2 new additions to our DAPS family. In the back here is our new program manager, Malik. Malik, can you raise your hand? And just let everybody know who you are. He's going to be in some of the classes, just kind of watching and observing. And then we also have our intern. We have an intern at DAPS, and she is an occupational therapy intern. Evelyn, raise your hand in the back. Evelyn is going to get her doctorate degree in May in occupational therapy. So she is here for a few more weeks, and we are so incredibly thankful to have her. We also have in the back our DAPS board president, Chuck Stewart. Does everybody know Chuck? Chuck raise his hand. Awesome. And then we also have our executive director, Leisha. Leisha's over here. Leisha. As well. So, oh, and Beth Jacobs, yes, one of our board members, yes. Beth. Who also attends Tai Chi and Dr. Mike. For those who have not picked up our class schedule, I have plenty in the back. On the front, it's got our exercise and speech classes. On the back, it's got all of our support groups. We had a support group meeting before this, so you'll see all the support groups and exercise classes that we have available as well. I also brought, I found this document on the Parkinson's Foundation, and it talks about Tai Chi. So it's about